Welcome to Community Conversations with State Attorney Bain, your talk show for insights on the criminal justice system, community issues, and public safety in Orange and Osceola counties. Join State Attorney Andrew Bain as he dives into the issues that matter most to you, keeping it real every step of the way.
All right, welcome everybody in Radio Land, everybody on social media, everybody tuning in across our platforms to listen and check out, and for me to share a little bit of criminal justice education as much as I can with you all. And I'm super excited for the conversation we're going to have today. It's going to hopefully spread some revolutionary type thoughts and conversations. As many of you know, as I continue to say, pretty much every part of this show and everywhere I go, the main mission of what my office does is community safety. So my job is to really provide safer communities and play my part in making sure that happens. We have to do that in an ethical way. But on the other hand, what I feel like prosecutors' offices around the country should be involving themselves in doing is trying to give themselves less work. And so that involves prevention and deterrence of crime. And we have to like kind of lean into some of these issues that are sometimes uncomfortable, really uncomfortable for us to talk about and really uncomfortable for us to deal with and think about. And so as many of you know, I'll try to give a little update on kind of what's going on with the office, what's been happening in our community. And, the first thing is kind of I want to address is something that happened last week. There was a very sad occurrence. One of the lieutenants from the Orange County Sheriff's Office committed suicide. And so you've heard me in this on this show a couple times, and many times when you hear me speaking in the public about mental health and the issues surrounding that, and what we need to be doing as a community to do better at trying to prevent those things from happening. Being a law enforcement officer is a super stressful job. They do more than I think most people ever could think about. The likely, especially when they get later in their careers and people retire, they really a lot of them have like a 5-year time period from when the time they retire until sometimes something happening to them, some tragedy occurring, either suicide, heart attacks, strokes, all those kind of things that kind of happen to them, largely because of the stress of the job. It's a high stress, so it's going from call to call, from something like from a domestic violence incident to a theft case, to maybe reporting and getting to a shooting, a homicide. There's a lot of ups and downs and a lot of things that people don't see that is really, really hard on the mind. So for me, a lot of I have baby girls. I don't like really children cases. When they come to my office, there is something that really bothers my soul when I see somebody hurting another child. And some of the hardest cases I ever had to work on was a homicide of a baby. It was a baby death case. There was a father that killed his own son, and he was a newborn, a couple-month-old baby. And it was some of those things and then imagine being a law enforcement officer, you had to respond to those calls and listening to the officers and the paramedics even have to recall that incident during the trial was almost vicariously traumatic for me. It was something that was really rough on the communities that it affected. And so if you are someone that is dealing with depression and you feel like that this is the end of the road, there's nowhere else you can go, nobody will understand you, nobody can take care in understanding the problems that you could be resolving and seeing in your life, please reach out. All right, and we make it really simple in our community. There's two ways you can do it. The first one is 988. All right, so all you gotta do is pick up a phone and dial 911, dial 988, and say, and that is a suicide prevention line locally here in the Ninth Circuit. And then the other one, if you feel like you just want to get some resources or somebody to talk to, pick up the phone and dial 211. And both that number will give you connected to all like the mental health resources that they could find in your available area. And so to make sure that like you are not alone. All right. So that is my biggest thing. You are not alone in this process. You are never alone in this world. You're never alone in making sure that you are going to be able to be somebody that cares about you. If you think nobody in the world cares about you, I promise you that State Attorney Andrew Bain cares about you and making sure that you are going to be well in your life. And if you want to live a full, prosperous life, that is my desire for every single person that lives in our community. And just to pivot a little bit, we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on at the office. We have hired so many people at this point. We are busting at the seams. I am in desperate conversations with the county and finishing out our building, both in Orange County and expanding our spaces in Osceola County to cover the number of prosecutors that we have in our disposal right now. And so we have a brand new class of attorneys that have entered our courtrooms. Many of them are waiting for the bar results, and hopefully we have a high passage rate. And then I'll have a problem of over hiring, but it's something that is super excited to have as a problem, and something that is been a really goal of our administration since we took office. And so it is one of the great things that I find joy in doing this job. We were also give you some trial updates. We had a trial in Osceola County last week where a man was found guilty of homicide, attempted murder, and aggravated battery for shooting 3 people. And so, it's something that we need to address. And so it's something that was part of the conversation with my guest here today that I want to talk about is gun violence prevention. It's talking about getting people to take a minute. I think I was talking with Sheriff Lima last week while I was speaking on a juvenile justice panel before he was speaking before I was. And we were talking about, he has a program in Seminole County where he's trying to teach kids how to take a pause before they decide to, do something that they're not going to be able to take back. And I know it's a struggle. It's hard. I was young. I was, full of power and testosterone, and I felt like I was the man and nobody could destroy me. I could take anything. I could do anything. But if I were to act on some of those impulses I had especially when I was a young teenager, my life would be much different than where it is today. I made some decisions that really was just 1 second, a couple minutes, making that to make a choice that could have changed my life forever. And so we really want to get into that conversation. And so I want to bring on some nice gentlemen that you may know from the city of Orlando and FFRC, and Mr. Abraham Morris and Mr. Rayshawn Brown. And we're going to talk a little about CVI. We're going to talk about a little bit about what the city of Orlando has been doing for quite a few time in the Paramore Kids zones, and trying to stem some of these cycles of trauma and behavior that are detrimental to our community. And so I'm going to start with Mr. Morris and we talked about what is this thing that some people keep hearing about from the White House that talks about CVI. What is that? What is that thing?
Yeah. So State Attorney Bain, thank you so much for having me on the call today. We're excited to talk about safety in our communities and taking a community approach when it comes to gun violence in our communities. Because I think it's two-pronged, right? We have to have a community approach and law enforcement as well. But community violence intervention is a national approach of addressing gun violence from a community perspective, right? So national experts across the country did their research, and they found that a very, very small percentage of individuals, like 0.001% of the population, accounts for the majority of homicides and gunshot wounds across a given location. So therefore, if you can identify that small percentage of individuals and work with them consistently, you can drastically reduce gun violence. So we reached out to national experts. We actually reached out to Advanced Peace, who is one of 4 evidence-based models across the country, to implement that right here in the city of Orlando, and we've seen some great success with that program.
It's kind of let's break that down. So, I people always talk about like crime stats and numbers, and I was kind of finished having I was just finished talking about people don't care about numbers. People care about what's going on in the community. They care about how it's affecting them on a day-to-day basis. For me, like my victims, they don't care if like gun violence is down. If I'm talking about their child that's been murdered by somebody. So kind of tell people like how does this actually work? Like on a step-by-step basis. Like how are you all finding a way to integrate into those communities and address this very serious issue that we're dealing with in our community when it relates to gun violence?
I think Ray talks about it best. He uses this quote that I'm gonna steal right now: is the one closest to the problem are also closest to the solution, right? And so, as governmental entities, we really need to lean on organizations that are in our communities who have those strong relationships, hire from those particular communities to then provide those resources. So the best person to talk about what it looks like on the ground, you actually have on this call, which we Mr. Brown, and Mr. Brown can kind of jump into what that looks like on the ground day in and day out.
How y'all doing, man? Thank y'all for having me. So I think you just said something very powerful, right? When you're dealing with day-to-day people, they don't care about the numbers. How is this impacting me locally? I think that for so long, first of all, understanding that the number one cause of death for young black man right now in the country is gun violence, right? So understanding that, and then also understanding the stigma that a lot of the times it goes, well, a lot of that is black on black crime. When they gonna do something about their own community, before we could do something, they gotta help themselves. So I think when you really break down what we're doing, this is what community look like. Community doing something. We're very intentional about this program, meaning whatever community we go inside of, we hire from that community. So we have nobody working outside of their community. So for example, if we inside of the Paramount community, the people that we are using to work inside of that community with the young people are from Paramount, right? So that creates a connection and a bond that we can't create. You can't spend money on that. That nothing can create that bond but time. So just already having that instant connection, somebody that they feel like care about them and somebody that they look up to, right? So we make a concentrated effort on hiring that community. What we do is we surround them with all the necessary tools of success to be doing the work from a community standpoint, but everything is community based. And what we do is we take these young individuals that have been identified as high risk, right? High risk individuals to commit acts of gun violence or be the victim of gun violence, which more times than none is the same person. If you out here shooting people, then you like most likely to be shot, right? And what we do is we surround that person with what we like to call map around services. And if you a community person and you listening to this call, that's just a fancy word for, man, most of these people that are committing gun violence, they don't have anything. It all really boils back down to finances and your financial situation and your social status, right? Most of these individuals don't have anything. And more than that, a lot of these individuals have seen a lot of trauma to get to this point in their life where they feel like this is how they should deal with their problems. This is their solution. So what we do is we surround them with what we call maparound services, which is basically taking this individual, putting them in the middle, and then surrounding them with all these things to change their life. With one of the biggest things of that being cognitive behavior therapy, right? So slowly like breaking down and changing the way an individual think, right? We have to slowly walk him away from, hey, this is not the way I should solve my problems. It's like what I really want to say, they call it second, there's statistical data to support this, but they call it secondhand emotion, right? Like what I really want to say is, hey, Andrew Bain, you hurt my feelings. I didn't like that you did that. That made me feel away. But whatever happened inside of my community, making me feel more of a man. Man don't cry, all these stereotypes, right? Now, the first thing I want to do is pull my heater. Like, I'm skipping past what I really want to say is, hey, you hurt my feelings. Could you not talk to me that way, or whatever it is, right? So we use cognitive behavior therapy to break that back down and say, hey, we can settle these things with a conversation. We can settle these things with a difference. Everything don't have to be end all be all with committing violence. Then as we do that, right, this is a forgotten population. So then we go back to the basics. What is it that you like to do? What does success look like to you? Do you want to go back to school? Do you like to paint? Do you want CDLs? All these things. What is it that you want to do, right? And then in that, right, so all these things are happening simultaneously. Then in that, we have to pour love, right? This is a community that don't trust anybody. So we approach this 7 days a week, 3 times a day, right? We have to contact anybody on our caseload 3 times a day, every day of the week, because it's very intentional. I'm not going anywhere. I'm here for you. I'm fighting for you, even when you don't want to fight for yourself. And I care about you. I'm not just showing up once in a blue moon and getting a pat on the back and going in front of a camera and saying, hey, I'm working in this community. I'm here every day, all day, which is why we are intentional about hiring from inside the community. Most of the people we hire, we want them to live in the community. This is an advocate that these people can go to every day. So I think it's a bunch of things happening at one time simultaneously. Most people we hire, we tell them it's 50% mentoring, intense mentoring, 50% case management, right? What do they need? ID, birth certificate. And we just make sure all these services that they put down, and we use a life management action plan. And we just make sure everything that they need, that there's an accountability to it, right? If you got a license appointment on Tuesday, we're going to make sure you get there. We're going to bring the car. We're going to do all that. So only thing you can do is pass or fail. And if you fail, we're going to practice with you. If you pass, then we on to the next goal. So that's what we're pretty much doing. It's intense. Like, we intensely holding their hand, right? Because that's what they need. Gun violence is a epidemic. It's an addiction, right? You don't tell a person to come to AA every 2 months or every 3 months and be like, hey, well, I hope you stop drinking, right? You deal with that person every day. So that's the same thing we doing. If this been your lifestyle for years and we just come into your life, we have to talk to you every day. So
that's nice. I mean, I think that it's easy. I don't know how you all feel, but I think that a lot of people look at, for instance, like criminal justice, for instance, it's like a one sheet thing.
Right.
And it's and I was always trying to warn people about that. Like, it's like, this is like an onion with like extra like growth around it. So like,
Right.
not only is it underground because it's an onion, it's also got like all this vegetation around it that we got to get through to, like, address a lot of these issues. So we use the term in America like gun violence. And I'm not sure. After I had a conversation a few weeks ago with a prosecutor from the UK, and he's talking to me about they have like super strict gun laws there, but they're still having a lot of violence with knives and all these different types of things. How do we? And then I was like thinking about, like, are we addressing it the wrong way? Should we be addressing it just as violence in general, or kind of what do you guys think about how we should be approaching the issue, like, in our communities?
I mean, I think personally, we look at it from the city's perspective. We look at it as violence on a level system, right? So what we've done is we've created kind of like prongs as we catch youth as they kind of fall through the cracks. Like, we want to get them. So, right, we know if an individual's in school and getting suspended or expelled multiple times, they're likely to end up in the juvenile justice system. So what are we doing at the school intervention level to work with those individuals most likely? What about diversion? What if they enter into the juvenile system? What are we doing for those individuals as they come out so they get their conditions of release and they're able to get off probation and get connected to different services? And then at our last bottom prong is community violence intervention. Those we know who are actively committing violence or gun violence in our communities. But along that pronged approach, we are really trying to identify those small group of individuals that we know need support. Because as much as we want to focus on the 3rd grade reading level, which I think is so important and we definitely need it, but if someone is committing violence against that 3rd grade and reading level who's trying to do things the right way, does that not affect the whole community as a whole? So if I don't address the individual who is committing gun violence or violence in particular, what am I doing as the community? Am I not doing an injustice to the community to help to support the whole community as a whole to make sure it's safe?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's there's symptoms. Like we talked about. My big thing. Me. One of my big things is literacy is a symptom. It's not of another cause. Kind of thing. But it's just a tool that we can help develop. Because like what Ray Sean was saying, is the person won't be able to communicate.
Right.
So a lot of these kids don't know how to communicate. They don't have the words to do it. And so and that's why I kind of found in working with this population. So a few episodes now, I think last week episode, we had a whole big thing about literacy. And one of the girls that we were working with, she's 15, about to be 6. She was 15, about to be 16 years old at the time we were working with her. She didn't even know the consonant, like the sounds of the letters, like like ah and ba, and like the actual sounds of the letters on the page. And so she was able afterwards to like actually communicate what she wants to communicate, more. That's what I love about page 15, for instance, what you guys have in
I
the
love
city.
page 15. Yeah.
Yeah, look, page 15 is like the same thing. You're trying to give them that voice, those the words to help them, express what's going on. It's so many layers, and like it's
And
so
I could
to the middle.
and just to add this comment, Mr. Bain, I've had side conversations with you. I know you come from it in your community, Abe's from another community, but another community that he comes from, and he's seen the problem. When we think about when we grew up and our own friends, like think about the level that we at and why we left some of our friends behind. It wasn't really that they couldn't do it. It was they were faced with different social obstacles. So that's one of my biggest things, right? When I think about it, it's if we could continue to break down the social divide, you could reduce gun violence, because the social still falls into the financial part to me. So it's like when I think about some of my friends that had they were in high school and their mama dropped the whole light bill on them, right? Like, oh yeah, you responsible for this.
Yeah.
So but you 15 years old, right? So the only way I can still attend school every day and pay a $400 light bill at 15, now I'm selling a little weed, which is illegal, right? So when you a lot of people don't get in these situations because it's cool or because I want to. It's out of pure need and environment. So it's kind of what like you said, just it's educating and going inside and say, hey man, I know you only used to this 2-3 mile radius. The amount of individuals that we work with, and then we find out they've never been nowhere. So they don't even know the world is as big as it is, as we know it to be. It's just like, this is all I know. I'm 22 years old and I've never been outside of Paramount or Mercy Drive or whatever that community may be. So just showing them something different. And one of the things we've noticed, right, we almost coming up on year 2. But one of the biggest things we've noticed is the more we give them to lose, meaning the more things we equip them with, the easier it is to walk them away from gun violence. When we think about some of our success stories, a lot of it has to do with making them contributing members of society. A lot of our young men that are doing the right thing now, it's nothing special. They just have like really good jobs. They go into therapy. We got them a driver's license. We got them somewhere to live. So all these things that would be kind of simple to me, you, and Abe on this call, we just equip them with everyday things. And now it's like, nah, I don't want to tote a gun on. So it's just amazing when I'm in these meetings and I'm like, yeah, it's really not as high intellect as we think. Sometimes it's just equipping them with the necessary needs to live. And they like, yeah, you know what? I'm cool on this. I don't want to shoot no more. So
I think, Ray, what you said about the social standpoint is also a huge point as well, right? Like some of the young people we work with, they born in it. Like that's all they know. Like their daddy was in the streets, their mama was in the streets, their brothers and cousins was in the streets. That's all they knew. It was like survival since day one, right? There's a young man that tells a story that his daddy got picked up for second-degree murder before he was even born. And so he came out with him and his mom, and all he grew up with knowing was his daddy did this or his daddy did that. And then his cousin followed. His family, some of his family members followed down the same footsteps. So it took us working with him consistently to just be like, hey, I know the path that you came from, but this ain't the path that you have to continue to take. And then breaking down those social barriers that stopped him from getting there, right? Like just the fact of him getting a flat tire might cause him to lose his job. He loses his job, he can't pay for rent. He can't pay for rent, he can't survive. He's going to be out in the streets. If he's out in the streets, how is he going to continue to survive? And some of the like social capital that we have every single day that we've built up, or people that we can rely on, they don't have.
Yeah.
One of the big exercises I do with the team that I work with is close your eyes and think about if you got in the most financial, emotional situation, who would be there to help you along that way. So I make them think about it. Think. And then I stop and I let it pause and I let it sink in. And then think if that person wasn't there, where would you be? And that's what a lot of these guys that we're working with are going through every single day.
That on you for a second though. I just had a thought because, you know, like when we made it out, it was nobody else to lean on. It was like you were the only person. So like if you went down, that was it. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so how do we help those kids not be succumb to that pressure as well? You know, in that, and trying to make sure that they understand, you know, that role that you now have in your family now, because you know some of them are gonna be the first ones to graduate high school, first ones to go to college, the first ones to actually have a stable job, their own place, when they're not living check to check. You know, so how do they do that without, you know, disconnecting from everybody else that, you know, in their family, which some of them can't do.
Let me take it real quick, Ray.
Oh, go ahead.
I will say though is I did have a trusting adult to go to who could guide me along the way, right? Like that's one thing I did have, and I think Ray could say the same. You know, knowing Ray's story, that he did have that one person where times got tough that he could go to, and I think like you don't have to go down this path, but can we turn to that trusted adult that they can go to when times get tough?
So he kind of, that's crazy. And we're not even in the same location, but I was going to say the same thing. So I think at a high level, we got to continue to, you know, us in these positions, right? When we're thinking about the future, we got to continue to empower people in the community that are doing the right thing, because those are the people they're going to trust, right? So, and I'm just making this up. If it's Uncle Tom Tom in the community, and he may not, let's say he's doing the right thing, but he may not understand the paperwork at a high level. He may not be, and me and Abe has run into this problem. He may not be collecting the data the right way to say, hey, I'm saving this many lives. But we know the community is saying it's Uncle Tom Tom. The kids saying it's Uncle Tom Tom. Us in high positions got to continue to figure out a way to continue to load Uncle Tom Tom with the resources, whether that's tools, money, whatever, to keep Uncle Tom Tom in a place to support the community. Because if we really saying that we want to save the community, then it ain't I. If the community already trusts Uncle Tom Tom, we got to empower Uncle Tom Tom and let the kids go there if that's where they want to go. Not move Uncle Tom Tom out the way and say, hey, it's me. So I just really believe in that model of empowering people that are already trusted individuals. And I saw that with my own life, right? I was one of those ones that made it out. And when it was my turn to come back, like you said, graduating college, first generation college kid, I fit all those criteria. I want to say it was, you know, for all the right reasons, but the city had continued to invest in me way before I found my own way to say, okay, we know the community trusts Rayshawn, so we're gonna continue to put him in a position where the community can go through him. And you know, for my age group at the time, they could say what they need, and then I could be that voice because they trust me. They may not trust the person sitting in the suit, but they trust me. So, you know, they always kept me in a position of community liaison or whatever that was to continue to get people in the door. So I think that's what it is. It's taking ego out of it and putting the people in a position that already have the power that may not just be doing a good job. It's a lot of mom and pop people that got a lot of trust, doing a lot of work, but they don't understand the paperwork at a high level like we do. They don't understand collecting the data and turning in all this stuff is what gets you paid. So just helping those people remain in a stable place so that these kids can go where they already trust and there's already love. You know?
I agree with that. I mean, I agree that we have to keep and empower the people that are in our communities, and especially the ones that are doing the right thing. We should be uplifting them as the model of doing so. And that's what I mean. Like, so, you know, I'm talking about as how people felt. I mean,
Right.
like I felt when we were coming trying to get out of that. It was like, you know, we busting out, but for me, like I had that adult. Like, so I'm not pretend like I did. So I had my dad. My dad was you know, still my hero for simple fact that he had every opportunity to fail.
Right.
So he had all the adverse childhood experiences that, I didn't have. Like, we had domestic violence in the house. There was alcoholism in the house. There was, you know, uh, multiple children. He was the oldest of all the kids. So he had that pressure of making sure that they were all taken care of. My grandfather left, and my grandmother kind of was stepped in as the kind of single mother. So he had all of that going on. Plus, then he was supposed to graduate high school. He's supposed to be the one to go to college. So, I respected him for those things. And so I wanted to switch a little bit on that and talking to Rayshawn a little bit. So I know the city of Orlando has this experimental thing they brought from I believe Harlem, would be the Paramore Kids Zone. And he's just talked about how the city invested in you, and continue to invest in you. So talk to the people about what exactly that is. And so for people that live in the city, they may know, but for people that, because we're broadcasting all over the place, let people that live in the county. And so what does that actually mean for you as a kid going through that process?
Man, that's a great question. So I would say this. When I was growing up, all I had was my mom, right? I was single parent household, black mom, and she had me really young. My mom had me at 16. So kid raising a kid, trying to figure it out, right? And what I would say is, so we down here we call it Paramore Kids Zone. Now we have a couple more zones, so it's labeled Orlando Kids Zone. And for the people that's listening, if you want to look it up, it's a replication of Harlem Kids Zone out of New York. But basically what it provided is, if you are living in one of these urban communities, I feel like it provided the missing piece. And follow me when I say, so I was athletic, right? Football paid for my education. I made really good grades. But one of the things that almost hindered me from attending the university that I wanted to attend was, how was I going to get back home? So me and my mom, you kind of got to maybe go somewhere you don't want to go, because how we going to get you back home? PKZ lifted that pressure. They made a deal with everybody that was going out of state that they would fly us back home at the time 5 times a year. So now that lifted the weight. Now I could come back home for Christmas. Now I could come back home for Thanksgiving. Now I could come back home for summer break. They bought us laptops. They bought us all the things that we needed for our dorm rooms. They provided us with what they called the student advocate, who talked us through. We didn't understand loans. All I saw was all that money. I thought I was rich at the time. You know what I'm saying? I'm about to take out $20,000 in loans. I'm on a whole full ride football scholarship, and I'm about to take out $20,000 because I never had that type of money. And luckily, I had what they call a student advocate, who was like, yo, nah, man, you got to pay that back at some point. And not only do you got to pay it back, you got to pay it back at an incredible interest rate. So, just having that guidance, look, you know what I'm saying? You want a little pocket change, you can get that from your scholarship. Don't take out these loans. Or just what classes to take, right? So I think it provided the missing link. I had a really good mom, and I don't want to take no credit for her, but I was a first generation college kid. So it was a process that neither one of us understood. So I think a program like the Zone, and everybody's story is going to be different. I had friends that went through the Zone, but they needed different things than me. So I think it just plugged the holes according to the individual and the individual need that you needed, right? It allowed me to work. So when I came back, every break I had a job. I earned money, so I was able to go back to school with a few $1,000. So it gave me a peace of mind. I know I'm gonna have some money in my pocket. I know I get to come back home on certain breaks, getting the necessary equipment that I need to be a successful college student. And then I'm doing internships in the summer, right? When I'm getting to my junior year, thinking about my career, right? So they let me take the necessary internships. So I think all that was important, right? I just think when you growing up in Paramore, I often tell people, we don't need to switch brains, right? I've always been a highly intelligent individual. I think what we lacked as a community is resources. So a program like Paramore Kids Zone just brought all these resources in to basically level the playing field, right? When you're thinking about your counterparts that may be growing up in College Park, that may be, growing up in more affluent communities, the biggest gap you will see is resources, not lack of talent or lack of intelligence. So I think that's what it did. It just leveled the playing field as far as resources.
Meanwhile, before I signed my first scholarship letter, I was like, where all this money going to?
I understand. I understand, man.
Yeah, and so I
just thought I was lit. I'm like 20,000, yo.
Hey Ray, guess what?
Yeah.
So I did have to pay that back.
I don't want no
Yeah,
argument.
yeah, put that back. Yeah, so so I was actually last night speaking at UP, which is I don't know if you guys, it's United Against Poverty, and that's exactly what we were talking about, and exactly the statement I made to them was that UP, for instance, has been there. So we also know United Against Poverty is over there on Michigan. It is a low cost grocery store that sells all types of supplies and things like that at basically 60-70% off of what it'll cost somebody. It's based on income. They also have other like services, like wraparound services, like we talked about, where they have case management and people working to make that happen. But one of the things that stuck out to me, that they had a class of people that work through soft skills job training that I kind of incorporated into our diversion programs. And there's like class 60, right, that they had of that. And UP has existed there for 22 years, right? And I was like, how many people in this 60? There were like about 20 people in this class they had. I was like, this place has been here 22 years. How many people that you knew existed prior to you getting involved here? And these are all people that are older than 22. And so, like, it's about how do we let people know about those resources? How do we get them to come out to the most frustrating thing when I talk to people and I'm like, hey, can you come out and bring this resource to the community here? And how can we be better at doing that? Is I guess
this
my
question. You know how I feel about this question. I gotta take it. So I'm gonna tell you something, and I'm gonna be fully transparent. I've never heard of UP.
Yeah.
And I've been here my whole life, except for when I went away for college. Never heard of UP. Right? So this is something I've been fighting for in whatever position. I talk to Abe about it all the time. As much money as we have, we gotta get a paid position. We gotta take it old school. We gotta get a paid position where this only person's job or this person's team is to pass out information. When you talking about under-resourced communities, man, these people work all day. They don't have time to be browsing on no internet. They're not doing that. You got a first job, a second job, the kids going to school. The high school are probably responsible for getting the elementary kid at home, taking a bath. By the time mama get there, it's just a little kiss and everybody laying down. And this 5 days a week. We have to get back to the old school, door to door. Hey man, I'm just letting you know this coming up. I'm just in the community. I'm just passing this out. I'm just like, where it's somebody's sole job is just to pass out information. You know what they say, man? You want to hide something from somebody, put it in a book. And that's metaphoric for what you're talking about. All these things exist, but because because of my circumstance, I don't have time to browse. I don't have time to go to PTA meetings. I don't have time to go to community meetings because I'm already impoverished. I need to work every chance I get. I don't know. So when there's things like PKZ offering this or UP offering this, it needs to be somebody's sole job to say, hey, they're doing this tomorrow. They're doing this. I've been the biggest advocate of that. You got to go old school. It got to be positioned out. We got to go door to door, man. I really believe that. We just got to pass it out.
I want to drop this too. I think it's also important to drop it right in the community. Like, make it place based. You know what I'm saying? Make easy access for people to have it right there in their backyard, so they don't have to go far. And I think that's one thing which we've done really good with the city of Orlando and the zones is because they're based right in the community centers. All the services are right there in your backyard to go to, so you don't have to go 25 minutes out of your way when you just work 2 jobs and trying to get home, right? It's right there in your backyard. I think that place-based is huge when it comes to this work to make it successful in the community.
I agree, man. It is. I think when I first started doing this job, one of my biggest things always, like Ray Sean said, like economics. So like poverty, I believe, is one of the biggest drivers of criminality.
Yes.
That you can think about. And I kind of got frustrated a little bit, but I had to kind of pull myself back, so like from being who I used to be. Because I was talking to a lady at the Small Business Bureau, right? And I'm like, hey, you guys do these workshops. Can I get you to come I was talking to Commissioner Burns and like about we were just talking about it. I was like, hey, can I get you to come out here to the Smith Center and just do a small business workshop? And her response to me was like, well, no, we only do workshops here at our location. And I'm like, but ma'am, you understand that like the businesses don't, the people that need this aren't going to come out to where you are.
Right.
Like they're not going to be able to do it. And she's just like, no, we don't come out. And I'm like, okay. So that's why I realized that was my another theory about government, but we'll talk about that later.
I'll feel you on that. The old, we call it that old guard that don't get it. When you got people in positions that don't get it, oh man.
Yeah. So everybody that I try to get to, is try to bring it to them. So I guess my other advantages in doing my job is that I get older people to go places sometimes. So, hey, I need you to go here and get this service, which is kind of a lot of what my diversion programs do. Is like, I need you to go here, sign up here, get this service, and one of those places like is up. Like, go there, because if you're stealing from Walmart and some other places, like, like some people there just make money. They're thieves. I get it. But if you're stealing because you got food insecurity, why would I send you someplace where you can get food?
Right.
Yeah.
And then I was like, other part of that, you can get a job because we're going to put you through the soft skills program and try to get you into hospitality or some of these other industries to get you off of my streets. I like I said, my job, part of it is to provide myself less work to do. And if I can do that, then I'm doing a great job.
Exactly.
I think sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think Ray hit on something earlier regarding his student advocate guiding him to different resources, right? Like someone who can walk you along the path to where you get the service, I think is huge. And it kind of goes right back to like someone passing out information, right? If you have a person who knows the resources like the back of their hand, right, and able to give those resources to those families on a consistent basis, you just turn into the plug for your community, right? You are connecting them to different resources.
That's it.
Mamas, daddies, cousins, brothers, sisters, and the person you're working with is going to call you all the time because they know if they go to you, you are going to get them connected to different resources. I think that is a huge part of the loop. You can have the best services out there. You can have 100% success rate. If you can't get the people to it, does it really matter?
That's it.
And it's trying to get people there. And to talk about, I want to kind of backtrack a little bit. We had a PACES workshop. Because I know Abe and I had conversations about that like a few weeks ago at New Covenant, and we had people sign up and also for that, and then like we all like a sign up list, like half the people show up, and so but this is a resource to talk about. Hey family, these are the things that we're talking about that have now disadvantaged your child, kind of thing. So. Like you're talking about, like the gentleman that had his dad like was in on a murder charge, like before he was born. Like this is a thing that's like an adverse childhood experience. This is that now he's a single, like living a single mom. You add poverty, you add all these other things to that conversation, and you build up all these adverse childhood experiences. But like, hey, this is not the end of the story.
Yes.
We can add these other positive things to this child's life. So they'd be easier for them to overcome, and that is not such a big, huge hurdle to get them there.
And I say this, man. I always tell people this because you just gotta be transparent. If somebody was judging me at 17, 18, I wouldn't be the man I am today. It's so unfair, especially like what Abe's saying. When you're born into it and you trying to figure out, okay, I'm born into it. This is what I know. Then I'm starting to develop stuff that make me the individual. So now I'm trying to break away from it, but that takes time, and it takes people pouring into you. And as that's happening, like I said, had I been judged at 17, 18, then it's like, oh no, you're a loser. Ray Sean a loser. He ain't gonna be doing nothing with his life. But luckily, there was people there to pour into me, and we let this thing play out. So a lot of the times, some of these individuals that we dealing with, this is just the early part of their story. This ain't their story. And luckily, we here and we fighting that fight. So once you understand that, it's really motivating work because it's like, man, when I think about my own life, and a lot of people don't want to be honest about that. But when you think about your own life, man, if somebody judged you at 18, who would you be? And I don't know because I don't know you personally, but would you have been on track to be State Attorney Andrew Bain? I don't know that. But I can honestly say for myself, I wouldn't have been on track to be director of CBI at 18. Shit, I was on track to be the participant. That's just the guy. That's the guy's honest truth. So, just understanding that. But luckily, people cared about me and poured into me, and I'm on the flip side of the spectrum. So I take it personal because I know what caring adults can do. Like I said, I could have easily been a program participant, but because people cared, now I'm the one guiding the ship. So I think just from personal experience, this work is so important.
I think state attorney, you kind of said it best, right? Like to enlighten people of your story, right? To get them to understand where you got to where you are is one thing, but then what are you going to do after that? Can we pour in those resources to get you to that point that you want to be? Because we've talked to a lot of these guys, 9 out of 10 of them don't want to be in the situation they're at. They do not want to be there. They don't have the money like people perceive them to have. They don't have the houses and cars like they perceive them to have. We actually had a situation where we pulled people together, had a conversation about what was going on, and these are individuals that were in the program. And you asked 15 of these boys, where you staying tonight? And no one knew. No one knew where they were going to go. So until we get these young people to understand the situations that they're in and give them the resources and tools necessary to get to where they can be and want to go, we're going to continue to see some of these same issues over and over again. And it takes that person to be able to break through with them, have that conversation like, yeah, you're in a messed up situation, but you don't have to be down. You don't have to be this way. There's other opportunities for you to improve. And here's the steps to do to take it. And I think that if we can do that consistently across the board, we will see a huge benefit across our communities, particularly in our urban communities.
Yeah, I think, I have a dream like you. Like I have a dream of one day being able to accomplish that goal. Hope maybe maybe I'll get there. We'll see. It's going to take a lot of effort of a lot of people to make it happen. But I think it's a goal worth having. Is that we have a community where the community cares enough about the people and especially the kids that are in the community to not just sit there and do nothing.
Right.
It's kind of like going to church. Like, so my dad's a pastor too. So that's why I would never be a pastor. I would lose my mind because you could be up there every Sunday. You given basically almost the same message in a different version, and you would sit there and watch the people not invest in the mission. And so it's one of those things I'm like, man, this is like a frustrating deal. Like, how can we get people off their couches, off the streets to just invest just a little bit? We don't take much. I mean, I think a lot of us could say it was probably a couple conversations we had with some people in our lives, some of those adults that we talked about that we kind of looked up to that kind of changed, how things were going to go.
Right.
And so how do we get that to happen more often? Is something that I'm definitely interested to be done in a systematic way. I don't think we can make the difference that we want to without a system in place. And so I'm super excited to see you all and see what's going to happen with CBI and see what's going to happen, especially with the Care More Kids zones, and see how all of that's going to play out. So super excited about that.
One thing I add to that conversation, if I have the opportunity to, is you asked how you could do it. And it goes back to the question of economics, right? There's people in the community, right, who are good people doing great work in our communities, working with these kids day in and day out. Pay them, right? Pay them for the services that they can provide, right? Like I think so often, particularly in our communities, we ask people to do volunteer work when they're working to make ends meet. Pay them what they're worth to do their job effectively, and we'll see it on the back end, right? We will see it on the back end, and we already see it with CBI, right? There's individuals who have influenced our community who do a very good job from a community's perspective of combating gun violence and solving conflicts. Rayshawn and his team, FRRC, pay those individuals to do that job every single day. I think we need to look at that because other communities, we call them peer supports, case managers, social workers. In our communities, we have the same qualified individual to do the work, but we need to stop asking them to volunteer their time and start paying them for the time that they're doing.
I totally agree, man. I'm I don't believe working for free. I don't think I kind of my children. I embedded in them at an early age. Like, hey, I think one of them. This is a quick story. One was like somebody was copying it off of me, and I was like, "Did they pay you?" And it was like, you can't be giving your knowledge away for free. Like, this is not a like slavery ended a long time ago for our people. Like, you can't be working for free. You know? So and so I think it's those kind of conversations and having with our with our kids and our communities and us building structures around it. I think the peer support models are amazing work. I think they do a lot in addiction and in making sure that in turning those tides and changing those minds. That's exactly what it is. And so I'm actually about to send my dad, he's still kicking around. He's also a mental health counselor now. I'm about to send him to NAMI. He's having like a peer support training for every Monday. I think from in mid-September to November, to try to see how we can do it. And do it on a circuit-wide level. You guys are doing great work in the city. The city covers around 300,000 people in the city of Orlando, but there's 2 million people in the Ninth Circuit that are people live here every day. So we got to be able to serve all those people.
Also,
we got to find a way to make it effective.
Gun violence has no boundaries, right? So
nope.
They care between municipality lines, right? So we need to be able to work across the aisle to make sure both communities are staying safe and consistent.
When you ready to expand, I'm your man.
I love it. I love it.
Yes, that's my new slogan. I just came up with it right there on the fly.
Hey, that sounds like you gotta monetize that. We're gonna teach each other trademark it. You know what I'm saying? Definitely get some lawyers involved. Get your trademark. Rayshawn Brown, you ready to expand? I'm your man. That's that. Hey,
I like it.
You can market it and everything. Make it a beautiful choice. Yeah, but I appreciate you, gentlemen. Thank you all for joining me for this conversation. There's more conversations that we need to have. Obviously, we weren't able to cover everything in about 45 minutes, but I think it's a good start to addressing a lot of the underlying issues surrounding what's going on in our communities, especially when it surrounds gun violence or just violence in general. And so, thank you all for coming on today.
Thank you for having us. Thank you for having me, man.
These conversations dope experience. So I appreciate the platform.
Yes, sir.
All right.
All right. So, it's a big conversation when it comes to gun violence. It is something that is I can't, like I said, it's like it's an onion on the ground. It's surrounded by vegetation. But there's some really core things that we can address. I think that we can do on a daily thing in our community. One, just get involved. And it doesn't take much, So when I'm around the community, and I try to see some of these young kids, they're not at the time they're supposed to be in school. Probably won't stop and talk to them and try to figure out what's going on. Why are you not in school when you're supposed to be there learning? And instead, I see you walking down the street. And so, doing those kind of small things and having those small conversations about offering just your wisdom in that community and your ability to make that impact. And it doesn't take, you don't have to be anybody special. If you call the title, end of the day, I'm Andrew Bain. I'm a father. I'm a husband. I'm just a regular person. I go home and cook for my family. My wife and I do laundry together. We just normal people. We go to work, but we do have, I think everybody has this, this desire, this need to serve and help people. And it doesn't take a lot to do it. It doesn't take anything grand. It doesn't take like hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars. Sometimes it just takes that. Just that, hey, you're willing to step up and say, hey, I see you. I know that you're supposed to be in school, for instance, or I know that you're hurting. I know that there's something going on with you that this is affecting you in a way that makes it's making it difficult for you right now. And so, so we're coming down to the end of the show, and it is the motivational minute moment, and we'll talk a little bit about that. What's going on? So, one of the things I want to kind of live my life based on is so don't be afraid to let your light shine, so that you can light the path for the people around you. And so your light, what is in you, can light the path for somebody else that you're doing life with. You can light the path for that young person that you come across that may need that word of encouragement. You may not know all the resources that are available to that child, or you may not even know how to specifically help that child with their problem. But your willingness to help, your willingness to light the path, your willingness to let your light shine beyond yourself and the people around you is what is going to change what's going on in our communities, is what is going to make the difference in the lives of the people that are around us, and is something that is desperately needed. I'm going to say desperately needed for the people, especially in the Ninth Circuit. We have a beautiful community, a beautiful, 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 beautiful community. I love this community, but we have to be willing to shine a light sometimes on some things that that are not so great. We would just and not be embarrassed about it, and not be shamed into a certain way of thinking, or shamed into being afraid to ask for help. So we started the show talking about that, right? Talking like you got to be able to ask for help. I'll say it again, those numbers again. Like if you're feeling like you're hopeless, you feeling that there is nobody out there that understands, pick up the phone, call 988. There's somebody to talk to you. Somebody's willing that they may not understand everything about what's going on, but they're willing to listen. They're willing to hear you out. They're willing to care about what's going on in your life. And if you aren't quite there, but you still feel like you need somebody, like you need something to go to, a resource to talk to, dial 211. Just dial 211, and we'll get you all the resources that you need to make sure that you are living in the best way that you can, and not and giving up into the darkness. All right. So my job every day for you is to fight against the darkness. All right. And you know how you fight against darkness? You turn on all the lights. All right. So just go out here, out here in the Ninth Circuit, and everybody in the sound of my voice, let your light continue to shine.
You've been listening to Community Conversations with State Attorney Bain. Join us again next Wednesday from 2 to 3 p.m. for another episode. Looking for real talk on the criminal justice system and how we can work together to make our communities safer? Tune into Community Conversations with State Attorney Bain every Wednesday from 2 to 3 p.m. Join State Attorney Andrew Bain as he interviews community leaders and activists, diving into the topics that matter most in Orange and Osceola counties. Get insights, stay informed, and be part of the conversation.